by show of hands, how many people in here are unemployed? Okay. Now, the senator just said that if the government right now extends unemployment insurance for you and people like you, that it's a handout, that you're going to be lazy and you're not going to continue looking for a job. Of you that raised your hand, is that true? No. And here's the issue. The senator knows very well that the problem is not that the government is involved. The problem is that corporations have record profits right now. They have more money than ever before in human history. Right now, corporations have the money to put people back to work. What they aren't doing is using that money to help people like you. So I think the question we need to ask is, one, where are the jobs in Wisconsin that you promised when you ran for office? And question two, why won't you make the rich pay their fair share in order to fund good jobs? Because we know that they've got the money. The question is, what are they contributing to help us get back to work?
There's a very large ideological divide in this country. So let me just try and explain my position.
I think it's about fairness, not about ideology.
You mean that I can eat and then somebody else might not be able to eat? That's ideology we're talking about?
I understand it. Like I said, let me answer. Okay. The only promise, by the way, I made during the campaign, really the only promise, was I would never vote with my reelection in mind. I stepped out the plate because we're bankrupting this nation. We've spent, in the last 3 years, $4 trillion we don't have. We're going to spend another $1 trillion we don't have.
How much in tax cuts?
The total tax cuts under the Bush plan has been about $1.2 trillion. But that was going back to the 2000s.
Sure.
So if you let me finish. In terms of the rich paying their fair share, the IRS just released its data for 2009. The top 1% earned about 17% of the income. The top 1% is, and by the way, the top 1% changes all the time. We actually still do have income mobility in this country, it's true. 17%. Their share of the income tax was 37%. So we do have progressivity in this. The top 5% paid about 58% of the income tax. The top 10% paid about 70% of the income tax. The top 50% pays about 98% of the income tax. So there is progressivity. I think we're a very compassionate society. We do want to see everybody have the opportunity.
How many taxes did GE pay, for example, last year?
I understand. Those are anomalies.
No,
those are individual things where they've got loss carry forwards. They've got, by the way, energy tax credits on wind turbines. There's all kinds of specials. I don't support those things. I haven't even had a chance to vote on those yet. I don't like special deals. I don't like crony capitalism.
So you support closing all the tax loopholes for these multinational corporations?
The true things that are tax loopholes that are special deals, things like wind turbine tax credits that really don't recognize the benefit, the discipline of the free marketplace. I think businesses should be able to make it on their own without looking for government for support.
When we see the president put forth a jobs bill and then it become political.
Well, because it was going to spend another $500 billion we don't have. I'm afraid, and that, again.
Okay, what did the deficits do to not having the money?
The thing we all need to fear is if this country hits a debt crisis and our interest rates spike by 8% like they did in Greece, that would increase our interest payments by $1.2 trillion. You'd wipe out all discretionary spending.
We don't have a debt crisis, we have a revenue crisis.
We're arguing that if we increase taxes on the rich, we can fund those programs that put people back to work right now.
Right.
Bridges, roads, schools, we can put people back to work. Those are real jobs.
The Obama administration has their SBA do a study, like how much does it cost to comply with government regulations? The study came back $1.75 trillion. Now let me put that in perspective. This is the burden we're placing on job creators.
Those regulations are placed to keep us safe.
But the CEOs are putting money in their pockets. They're not getting bankrupted by the government. They're not bankrupted at all. They're taking the profit off the top and shoving it in their own pockets instead of making jobs with it. And then we're still making it easier and easier and easier for them to do things like mine without regulation, so that we're saying, oh, well, we need these businesses to come in because otherwise no one will have any jobs. But then when we give them all these loopholes and all this money back for like being such wonderful rich people, right? Then they don't give us any of the jobs that we say they create when we give them these loopholes and things.
Amen.
Right? They're putting it all in their pockets. So as long as they continue, CEOs are recording record profits and they're recording profits at higher margins versus what the people that work for them make in history. So it's not like the government's bankrupting these people so they can't create jobs. The government's bending over backwards and laying down and getting screwed by these corporations into giving up all regulation and then still just pocketing the money.
First of all, certainly I would never propose giving up all regulations. But $1.75 trillion, to put it in perspective, is 12% of our economy. It's a larger number than all the 8 economies, and that is what we're burdening our job creators with. I don't think that makes it a very attractive place for job creation. We also do have the highest corporate tax rate in the world. Which again, we have to compete.
People pay it.
We compete, and so many do.
If consumer spending is 70% of the economy, how are we supposed to make it if 2% of the people got all the money? I mean, how are we going to spend money to keep the... Is there some type of ideology there that we can make it on with 2% of the people having all the money?
2% of the people don't have all the money. But again,
consumer spending 70% of the economy.
1% of the population does have 17% of the income. And again,
49% How much percent of wealth?
I am concerned about the disparity between the top and the bottom. I am. But again, the solution isn't to tear the top down. The solution is to get our economy going again. And as somebody who's run a business,
I ran one too.
I haven't made.
It wasn't big as yours, but I ran a business.
My question for you is this: when he asks about a living wage, making sure people are able to live with their job, why do you talk about the corporate CEOs and not the regular people?
I don't talk about
he talks about living wage and you talked about job.
I'm happy to address things like minimum wage because the true effect of minimum wage is let's take a small business. Let's talk about a small business that wants to hire more people. But if you put a minimum wage too high, you actually prohibit him from being able to create a job because he can't afford it. It puts him out of business. So what we're doing is we are limiting the number of entry-level positions so that people can actually get into the workforce, prove their worth to an employer. And bottom line, when you're a good worker, you don't stay at minimum wage for long. Now, trust me on that. It's not universal. It's not universal, but trust me, as an employer, I certainly didn't want to lose good employees. And so you actually have a competitive marketplace, and so if your employer's not paying you good wages and you're a good worker, you go and look for other places. Now, it's hard to do. It's hard to do when we have such high levels of unemployment. But again, I would get back to we don't have a very attractive place for business investment.
Senator, have you ever lived off of minimum wage before? Do you have any idea what it's like for a family to live off of minimum wage? How old were you? You were 15? Did you have children?
My first job was for $1.45 an hour. And again, I worked full time. Actually, and I think the most number of hours I worked when I was going to college was 96 in a week, plus taking full work.
How much did college cost when you went?
It was a lot cheaper.
Yeah, I got $100,000.
It was, and again, this is.
And how much was your rent?
I was able to live in my parents' house. Okay.
So you didn't actually have to support yourself off of minimum wage, is what you're saying?
No, but I supported myself after I got my education.
So we want to ask you, right here, while you've got the face of many unemployed and underemployed folks, are you going to support an agenda for good family-sustaining jobs that are funded by making the very wealthy, the top 1% pay their fair share of taxes, or are you going to continue on the path of cutting away the future of the people in this room?
I absolutely want to support everybody in this country to be able to build a good life for themselves and their family. We have a difference of opinion in terms of how you go about doing that. You just said we're cutting everything. The last 10 years, our federal government spent $28 trillion. The current argument moving forward is President Obama wants to spend $46 trillion in the next 10 years. The House budget, all these draconian cuts, would spend $40 trillion. Now again, the point being is I don't think we'll be able to borrow that much money. We're going to hit a debt crisis. And then the problems you're worried about now in terms of 9% unemployment is going to pale in comparison to what happens when this country hits that debt crisis. So again, I am here because I'm concerned about the bankrupting of this country.
Why don't we raise taxes? We can solve the deficit.
Because I want anybody who wants to raise taxes to ask themselves two questions. Sure. How many jobs will that tax increase create? How many jobs will that help? How will that tax increase help grow our economy? Because what we need to do, the number one.
And also, just a simple yes or no. If unemployment insurance comes up next week, and it's a simple yes or no, which way will you vote? Yes or no? No.
We have to reform the unemployment.
So I'm saying
we have to pay for it. We have to find cost offsets, and we should reform the system.
If there's gridlock, will you just say yes? We will do it for the people that are hurting right now. Yes or no?
We need to pay for it so we don't further bankrupt this nation.
Did you sign a pledge with Grover Nordquist not to raise taxes?
I don't want to increase taxes because I signed the pledge.
Did you sign the pledge?
I signed the pledge because I don't want to increase taxes.
Yeah, but you didn't sign the pledge with us. So how come that was more important?
You don't mind making our kids nice, though.
You guys have to say
We are the 90